Untold stories, migration threads that connect Dudley's diverse community. I'm TJ, and in this series, we'll be exploring the powerful stories, memories, and legacies of the Afro-Caribbean community right here in Dudley. We're back for our third episode, and in this episode, our guest is born in Birmingham, UK, to parents who came to England as part of the Windrush generation in the 1950s. Today, we are joined by Zolo Speak. Thank you for joining us, Zolo. First off, tell us a bit about yourself for the viewers at home. Introduce yourself. What do you do? Who are you?
How long you got?
We got time.
Okay. Well, as you heard, my name is Zolo Speak, which is my musical name.
Okay.
My real name is Temba Loxolo,
Okay.
which I changed to that in the 80s, which is another long story. Maybe we may or may not come to that. When people ask me where I come from, well, the simple answer is I come from my mother. And, and I think everybody in here has, right? Which brings laughter, which brings, a little bit of recognition. But the theme of that is that we all come from the same place. And so we're not different.
Yeah.
We all come from a sperm and an egg. And so in theory and in practice, in reality, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that, and that's why we have so much issues in the world. But anyway, may I preach now? So I was born here in the UK. So in the 60s, as a young boy, it wasn't easy. But then, as children, we don't really understand the issues and politics that's going on. But I did pick up racism and was aware of it. That certain opportunities were not there in school. I remember being at school and, one of the brightest boys in the class, and the next thing I know, I'm in the dumb class, the class where all the so-called dumb people were. And I didn't quite understand what was going on. But as a boy, I couldn't really make any nice eye. But I know my parents was aware of it, especially my mother, who was a teacher back home. So, we lived in an industrial area, an area called Sartley in Birmingham, which was a white working class area, but with lots of people from the Caribbean moving in, and it was a joyous time. And again, we were aware of difference, because some people were welcoming, were really nice. Some people were not so nice. I remember a next door neighbor, their kids, which were older than us, were fantastic. And really welcoming, even the mother, but the father, oh my God, was a very nice man. Wouldn't give us our ball back when we kicked it over the fence and whatnot. But anyway, so that was kind of the vibes we were picking up growing up as a kid. And then from there, and then we noticed that when I reached about 10, 11, all the factories started to close down. And then all the white people started moving out. And then, we started to see more people from the Indian subcontinent moving in. And so the whole area started to change. And, that in itself was also a thing that we didn't quite understand what was going on, apart that, so-called Great Britain wasn't so great again, and so it's like our place was being shifted again.
So that being said, you've already, I like the way you're talking to me already and to laying everything out. So in terms of growing up, then you've already explained what it was to kind of like day to day. Did that obviously it would have had an impact on your identity? Did you feel like you were a British person more than a Jamaican person, or a Jamaican person more than a British person, or was it more mixed?
I felt Jamaican. I felt, though, our peers who came from Jamaica would call us English boy. English boy, come here. But I always felt Jamaican. Even though at that time I didn't come from Jamaica. I could smell Jamaica, I could feel Jamaica, I could see Jamaica in my head. Because my brothers and sisters, 3 of them older than me, came over in 60, I think it was 66 or 68, I can't quite remember. And again, they would just lay out the environment and how happy it was, etc., etc., etc. So I felt Jamaican. Though, obviously, I had some British quirks, and obviously my tone might have been more Brummy than it is now. I couldn't speak the lingo when I needed though, you know what I mean? And yeah. There, but there was some, I followed Birmingham City at the time. Slap on my hand. Villa support.
Oh, is it Aston Villa right now?
Oh yeah. Anyway, and my friends, half of my friends were white boys.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, It didn't really hit me until I went to senior school.
Okay. Yeah.
Then there was definitely okay in junior school. I had a couple of fights, but it wasn't really so much. It wasn't stark until I went to senior school, and then you started to see the differences from some of the teachers. Some were nice, some weren't. In terms of those who got punished. So some of my peers, I was a goody two-shoes, by the way. But some of my peers were just naturally rebels. And, they couldn't get on. Maybe now we might see them as people who had dysfunctional homes, or more likely they had learning difficulties, or they were suffering with shock. Because like myself, I could name about 3 or 4 other kids my age group who had lost their parents. So I lost my father when I was 11. And I know 3 other families very close by, the same thing, which is something that we don't really talk about. Also, there was a lot of mental illness that people don't talk about even now, back then. And there were, and some families had rough, raising. But a lot of the times it was covered up, So some of the kids then would act out at school and, don't want to follow regime and, and they get picked out more than perhaps the white kids who were just as terrible and whatever, more terrible, some of them, but, they would get lesser punishment. And then you started to see, for our defense, we started to move around together as black kids. The white kids, some were alright, some weren't. And then you started to hear certain names and whatnot. But really kind of rough, so they never really played with us too much.
They wouldn't dare.
They wouldn't dare.
No. So, that being said, it kind of sounds like you guys, as you got older, you became more aware of the unfair treatment. And you banded together with those that you could relate to. Was that the case even outside of school, so like communities, parents, friends?
Definitely. The only time we kind of mixed outside school is that I remember I went to Cub Scouts and Scouts.
Yes.
The Scottish Scouts. And so and the church that we went to was a Baptist church. So you would mix with the wider community. But outside that, no.
No, not really.
No.
Okay. So, growing up then, as you became more and more aware of the unfair treatment, of the racism, of everything, did you feel that the way you were raised, as in like, for example, something like manners, principle, the way you carry yourself, the way you walk and talk, you said that as yourself, growing up you were more of a goody two-shoes. Do you think that saved you from more trouble than other people might have gone into?
Yeah, that was my mother. You know what I mean? As a single parent. I don't know how she managed to do it. I mean, she managed 7 kids. And all of it turned out right. And that was her. And matter of fact, it was her father and it was a great grandfather and great mother and great great grandmother. So it was them kind of upbringing. So, you know, we have to be frank, you know, in our community, you know, we have some who have manners and discipline, and they have some who don't.
We don't, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes we call them old nigger, right? And, you know, it's a fact, you know, and that goes throughout all societies and all communities, you know. You have those who you know, try to do good and raise their kids well, and then there's others who don't. And we're fortunate enough to have that family who try to raise us properly. And so that kept me in good stead. Racism didn't really come as a shock to me until, would you believe it, I left school. I mean, I was aware of it and everything, but it's when I left school, there was no work, you know, we were going through the difficult 70s. And I remember going to the unemployment, the DSS, as I used to call it. And I remember my name was called. And I stood up, and I remember all the people them in the room looking at me. And then when I walked across to the person who called me, you know, his head was looking down. It was a man, and he looked up, and he go, "Oh," and then that's when it clicked. It was my name. You know. And that's good. And I thought, okay. So that put me onto the road of, even though I wasn't conscious of it then, that name had to go.
Yeah. If you don't mind sharing, what was the name?
Oh my God, you really want to know that? So, no, I don't mind sharing it. So my name was Dennis Green.
Okay. Yeah.
And some of the families kept it, the Green. You know what I mean? And you know, we're not a very big family, but we have a threads in U.S., Canada. Well, I was going to say mainly Westmoreland and a few strings in Maypen and Kingston, Jamaica. But we're not a very, very big family compared to some other families that we know. You know, so in terms of family names, it's Green, Smith, and Cunningham.
Okay.
You know, and we've actually done. You know, we've gone back as far as genealogy. 1777.
Wow.
You know, obviously, we're not 100% sure, but you know, and that's a woman who came from Africa. And then the other side, we know that we have some Scottish.
Okay. So it sounds like then your cultural identity has been shaped as you've gone on. So when you were for instance, you just shared with when you were stood up and you realized, okay, maybe I'm gonna switch up what people know me by. So you change your name, tracing family traits. Have you found that you have really shaped it yourself, as in your own personal identity, or would you say that it's more been shaped by experiences? It might be both, but I want to hear your...
Well, the environment have a lot to do with it. I'm not going to deny that. And but also, you know, a urging to know more. And luckily at the time, you know, because we didn't experience, my generation really experienced Black Power. It was just kind of waning out at the time. But thankfully, Rasta was just coming up. And that really did shape me and gave me an understanding of self. And, you know, and being African was a vital part of us, simply because we are African, you know. And though we may have shades of other influences in us, you know, primarily that's the sauce. And so that really gave me a conviction and a better understanding of not what I was, but who I could be. You know, and so that took me down that road. And you know, I started to go to a center similar to this in Birmingham, which actually came out. It was called The Citadel. And that came out to too much young boy I roam bouldering
Give them
and I
something.
caused havoc. So,
Yeah.
you know, it gave us something to do. And whilst I was there, you know, I think my characteristics shone. And
Yeah.
I was given some
Yeah.
trainee youth worker,
Okay.
which eventually put me onto the road of community work, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst I was there was a visiting pastor who was learning to become that at one of the colleges in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
And he was from South Africa, and on his way, before he went back,
No.
whilst he was with us, he was teaching us
Yeah.
closer,
Okay. Yeah.
and you know, and so yeah, we really became quite close, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, before he went back, he was saying, "Oh, he doesn't have anything to give us, and you know, I wish blah blah blah." And I kind of piped up and looked at him and said, "Well, you can give me a name."
Okay. Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, "Ah, you, Temba."
Just like
What does
that.
that Temba mean? Hope. I said, "Well, if you give me a first name, I need a last name." Lo.
Okay.
What? Lo.
Yeah.
Look solo. I said, "Well, that means faith." I said, Temba look solo.
Yeah.
And I've been known as that ever since.
Ever since.
Yes.
Wow. So obviously you're telling me so much about like your character and how you shaped your identity. Going back a little bit, then growing up, what impacts do you feel like your parents had on you? Because obviously they've migrated from their home to a foreign country to establish your family, give you better chance of better life, whatever the promise or desired reason was. What kind of traits from them do you think that you've carried through, no matter what the environment has tried to do?
Well, never to be satisfied with your lot.
Mm.
You know, I mentioned my mom was a teacher,
Yes.
Sunday school teacher. I think they settled down in school, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when she was there, and so she always wanted to do better. You know, I think in these times, if she was a young person, now she would have gone to university to be whatever she wanted to be. I'm 100% sure of that, because I see it in her, you know, in her kids, in her grandkids, in her great grandkids now.
Yeah.
And my dad was a carpenter,
Mm.
but he was more than a carpenter. He was also a good man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anything in that area before he came here needed doing, then call him.
Yeah.
Any coffin need building, then call him.
Wow.
And sometimes you don't need to call him, he will just do it, you know. And he was one of the first from that area who came to the UK.
Yeah.
And he sponsored enough people to
Wow.
come.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
People don't even talk about it again or whatnot, but he did.
Yeah.
And remittance, he would send back every month money. So he you know, he was a legend.
Yeah.
You know? But I believe, you know, listening to stories and whatnot, that he was very dissatisfied with his lot here in the UK. And I always remember when I was a kid, I always used to see these blue Jamaican passports, and it used to have my picture in it, and I was just like, my mum, what you know, I thought we had English passports and blah blah, and that was because he was heading back.
Oh wow.
Year two, I'm going back, and we were supposed to go back, and then he became ill,
Okay.
and so that got scuppered, and then it never reached his
Yeah.
a goal, and unfortunately, 70 he passed. Yeah, which was I think I was in a daze for a couple of years.
Wow. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, and even now when I think about it, it hurts,
Yeah.
you know.
Of course.
And it hurts because him never achieving goal,
Yeah. Okay.
you know. But he have a strong legacy.
Mm.
Strong legacy.
So that being said, you've mentioned the strong legacy. Of course, we're interviewing yourself. So do you feel like because of, although you said that your father didn't achieve his personal goal, your parents succeeded in giving you guys such a good like foothold in life, and they achieved so much individually and as a pair. Do you feel that? Did you ever, or do you still feel that there was like pressures on yourself to reach a certain goal? Obviously, you said your mother's like university track. Did you feel like I have to do something? I have to get to a certain level to make all of this worth it?
Not really.
Mm.
I think it was just part of the we you know to do better.
Yeah.
To no, my mother wasn't like you have to do this or you have to do that and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Sometimes religion maybe, but yeah.
Mhm.
But no. I think her number one priority was to make us resilient
Mhm.
and therefore to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say that because I remember when it's so in the 80s now,
Mhm.
mid 80s, when a knee eye to a grasshopper, me I play needles, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So call me a drummer.
Mhm.
So yeah, and right, so me born drummer,
Yeah.
right? But I never really got the opportunity until in the early 80s to actually own a little drum kit and whatnot. And so I started a group, which eventually ended up being
Yeah.
semi-professional
Yeah.
ish in the mid 80s. That group was called Salon Foundation, and we started to. We got to the point where we were actually supporting and backing Jamaican artists.
Oh, wow.
So we couldn't.
Yeah.
We must have been half decent, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember the first gig
Mhm.
I organized was in a little club in Birmingham called the Stars.
Okay.
And my mother came,
Yeah.
you know, collected the monies at the door,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you know what I mean. She was a part of it.
Okay.
I can assure you, many mothers ain't doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the
so
kind of
the
mother
club.
she was. You know what I mean? Like, you know, yes, she never liked when me locks me here and that cause friction, but she was always backing me.
Yeah. Always in your corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that, as you were moving through life, and you were not just, as you've already spoken about your identity being formed. You've now spoken about the music aspects, the career part of it. As you moved through areas, obviously, we know that you eventually get to Dudley, and we'll touch on that as it comes. But what was it like moving through the entertainment space, if I could say? Because obviously you performed. Did you find different levels of opposition compared to in school, like racially and cultural clashes and stuff, as you move through the space?
well, let me give you an example. So our group was we were recognized as one of the best bands in Birmingham.
Wow.
And so we did a silly thing, which was to go in a competition,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a local competition, and you know, so we start from the beginning. We got right to the finals, you know, blew everybody away.
Wow.
And then there was this white group. I can't remember their names. They kind of reminded me, though, now thinking about it, Duran Duran. I don't know if it was Duran Duran,
Okay.
but they kind of reminded me of that
that
band.
type of group.
Yeah, but they were good.
Yeah.
They were good.
Yeah.
No one better than us, but they were good.
I was waiting for that. Yes.
Nah, they were, you know what I'm saying? But they were good. Anyway, so we blew them away.
Yeah.
Sports has gone mad, everything.
Yeah.
And did we win? No,
No.
of course not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when we realized this business not easy, and it wasn't easy. You know, the biggest band back then was reggae band was in Birmingham was still Pulse.
Yeah.
Enough respect. They were good, man.
Yeah.
And so they kind of opened some doors,
Yeah. Yeah.
but which was that we could play locally, and it enabled us to, you know, and matter of fact, we nearly signed on with them,
Wow.
and whatnot. But then, like with a lot of things in music, things don't always work out the way. So even like you know, nearly signed on with Ireland, but then, you know, Ireland, what, two reggae groups from Birmingham, nah.
Yeah.
And that's the music business.
Yeah.
So them of them won,
And then the stick.
and then that's it.
Yeah.
And so we had all those kind of pressures and whatnot. And, you know, you get ripped off left, right, and centre. We was in London playing at the QE, the Queen Elizabeth Hall, first reggae and bands to actually play there with Jamaican artists and whatnot. Got stranded down there because promoter spent out the money, dig up with the money, gone, you know, you know, and you kind of, this ain't good. This ain't good. But the things that I learned was, you know, to promote yourself and to, you know, publish yourself. To them times it was records, so you go to all the record shops and you leave records.
This is me. Yeah.
And you know, and so we used to get paid. You know, we used to go back after 2 weeks or 1 month, and you get your money and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, don't even get me started with now. It was like, why have I come back into this?
Wow, really?
It's awful.
Yeah.
This Spotify business, and it's like pathetic. I you know, you young people, I don't know.
You prefer the system that was in operation back then?
Yes.
Yeah.
'Cause at least, you know, when you produce something, if it sells, you see it. You see
Okay,
it.
so it's the
So if you
tangible
sell,
aspect.
yes, it was tangible.
Yeah.
But now it's not tangible.
Yeah.
And all that fight we put back in the 80s and early 90s to try to make a way, you know, it's, I mean, you see more black people's faces on things now, and on TV and on whatnot, etc. But it still has, it's almost harder to make a success. And because back then, if you release a record, right, you probably got, you probably might have 25 to 50 different records coming out that week. You know, you put out a track today, millions.
Everybody's releasing something.
Millions, because it's worldwide.
Yeah.
Millions.
Yeah.
So unless you've got a big record company behind you, you know, or you've got a big fan base, you know, through multimedia, which is not a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing as well. It's a different, it's a different ball game.
Yeah.
Totally different ball game.
Yeah.
But